The Red Pill follows filmmaker Cassie Jaye as she investigates the controversial world of men's rights activism, a movement often described as a hate group who speaks against feminism.
It's a gathering of women haters.
The Southern Poverty Law Center has classified that group and men's rights groups as hate groups.
He wrote a piece declaring the month of October to be Bash a Violent Bitch Month.
During the filmmaking process, interviewing leaders and supporters of the men's rights movement as well as feminists and gender studies professors, Jay questions her own views and eventually ends up siding with the men's rights advocates or MRAs, painting them in a favorable light. She concludes the film in this way.
For a society to accept anything said on behalf of women's rights, and then to shame any dialogue about men's rights and call it hate speech is precisely the problem. I don't know where I'm headed, but I know what I left behind. I no longer call myself a feminist.
The film becomes a defense for a movement that was presented at the beginning of the documentary as sexist and misogynistic, raising some ethical questions to analyze. What obligations does the filmmaker have to avoid the distortion or misrepresentation of reality, even when attempting to serve a higher goal, such as exposing perceived injustice? And what responsibility does the filmmaker have for ensuring that persuasive techniques do not distort established facts, rules of evidence, and the principles of sound debate? The film shows two opposing perspectives, men's rights versus feminism. To illustrate this division, the filmmaker color codes the interviewees' names to identify the side of the debate on which they are standing, red for men's rights and blue for feminism. Both colors borrow their meaning from the Matrix movie.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland.
And if he swallows the red pill, the scales will be peeled back from his eyes. He will see everything that he hasn't been able to see. And if he takes the blue pill, he'll just go back to sleep.
By assigning both colors in this manner and referencing the red pill in the title, the filmmaker presents the men's rights advocates as people who have woken up to reality, while feminists live in a world of distorted facts.
The men's rights movement really got going as women began to make gains, and some men have felt threatened.
This evident subjectivity in the storytelling might have been frowned upon in the earlier stages of documentary film, but showing a subjective voice is perfectly acceptable and even encouraged today. Since documentary films do not show an objective reality, but rather a creative treatment of actuality, the world as seen from the filmmaker's point of view, it is perfectly ethical to state your personal thoughts and opinions in a documentary film, and then present arguments to support them. We only need to take a look at Michael Moore and see how he makes his political views extremely clear. Documentary film, after all, is a persuasive art, and making a case for a specific point of view does not automatically mean that the filmmaker is trying to deceive the audience. Viewers of any film have the freedom to agree or disagree with the filmmaker's arguments. In a first-person film, such as The Red Pill, Cassie Jaye has the freedom to show her own thought process in a persuasive manner.
Guys are actually the ones that are disadvantaged and discriminated against.
However, do first-person documentaries give filmmakers a license to express freely their own views on any social matter without the need to support those views with strong arguments? According to Bill Nichols, an ethical documentary practice honors reason as fully as possible by using accurate claims and known truths while knowing it must exceed the bounds of logic to achieve persuasive ends. Jay certainly gathers a long list of arguments in favor of the men's rights movement, but many of these arguments have logical flaws that distort reality. For instance, when she shows statistics comparing male and female casualties in different wars, or the numbers proving men are more likely to die from work-related accidents than women. These numbers are used to build a narrative in which men are expendable to society and therefore more oppressed than women. In a way, it poses a relevant question. Why are men so often convinced by society to sacrifice their lives for a greater good? But offers an unrelated response that does not really hold up to further scrutiny. because society treats women better than men. In a similar way, Jay presents the experiences of different men who have been separated from their children by family courts as proof of discrimination against men. The interview's testimonies really are moving, but they do not prove that the law is biased against men. Many other testimonies could actually make the opposite case, that the law is biased against women.
I've always thought of feminism as being the fight for gender equality. And yet, I've never heard about fathers' rights and the injustices going on in family court. Why is this?
The feminist interviewees included in the film appear somewhat dismissive about the previous issues, mainly by the construction of the narrative through montage. Many times, the filmmaker shows an emotional testimony from a men's rights advocate, followed by a dismissive remark from the feminist side.
I'll just say I don't think it's I don't think that a lot of their assumptions are correct to start with.
It also shows the peaceful gathering of the MRAs as opposed to the angry feminists who are trying to silence them. And so, it paints a picture in which feminism doesn't care about men at all. It stereotypes feminism as a man-hating movement who fights an oppressive patriarchy that, according to the MRAs, doesn't even exist. The director shows different and sometimes conflicting variants of the men's rights movement, but it portrays feminism as a single, unified ideology that cannot possibly care about men's problems. The fundamental flaw with the red pill is not supporting controversial views. The problem is not questioning those views enough and focusing on that very notion of conflict between men's rights and feminism. After all, those same patriarchal gender roles that feminism challenges are the ones that send men into battle and life-threatening jobs. It's those patriarchal gender roles, the ones that see fathers as providers and not educators, and who teach men as well as women to feel ashamed of suffering abuse and not seeking help.
What we're trying to do is we're actually trying to work on the same things that you're working on, but accept the fact that you're just too busy hating women.
Now, even if there are some flaws around the film's arguments and the representation of gender issues as men's rights versus women's rights, Cassie Jaye does believe what she is showing in the film. She's not trying to deceive the viewer. She genuinely believes that the men's rights movement needs to be heard and understood regardless of their problematic side. In the document Honest Truths, Documentary Filmmakers on Ethical Challenges in Their Work, filmmakers define do no harm and protect the vulnerable as the driving principle behind ethical decisions. Cassie Jaye does a great job at protecting her main characters. She attempts to inspire compassion toward men's rights activists as a group that is often silenced and attacked by the media. But could it be harmful to promote an ideology that tends to be misogynistic? Yes, viewers are going to make up their own minds at the end of the film. But is it possible that viewers who agree with this portrayal of reality are likely to agree with the whole movement in general and overlook its negative and possibly harmful side? As Bill Nichols explains,
it lets you come to that conclusion by watching the events unfold. And I think that's a really crucial point, because it's not sending a message, not waving a flag. It's saying, here's a way of seeing this particular reality. What do you make of it?
Cassie Jaye does deserve credit for humanizing her enemies, as she said, and making a film that would challenge her own views as well as those of the audience. It is not easy to approach a controversial subject with an open mind, but she was able to listen to these stories and encourage the viewers to do the same. However, by focusing on the title's red pill distorted narrative of MRAs versus feminists, and the assumption that patriarchy cannot exist because women are privileged while men live oppressed by society, she ended up promoting a potentially harmful ideology instead of shedding deeper light on social and gender issues that are very much real and deserving of attention.